So this is speculation and hyperbole, but it's a topic that you guys have asked me to talk about before. So let's get some music. Over the music. All right. A little bit of music, a little bit of music. So, question is, according to the Bible in Genesis 1 and 6, I believe, they talked about how the giants were made from the Nephilims, they were made from the angels that came into the women of, what are they called, sons of God. And they came to the women and they made giants. They made the Nephilims, there were several names for them, the Raphaims and all this other kind of. There were several names because there were different groups of giants, and they lived all over the place. Some of them were like Gog and Magog. They were giants. And of course, we see the stories of giants, in the land of Canaan, where they were afraid to go into the land of Canaan because they said there were giants in the land. So there were giants all over the place. And there were different types of giants, and there were different scales of giants. Some of them ranging from 7-foot average all the way up to a couple miles. And how we know this is because of the bones that are found. They found bones that, hey, what's going on? Happy Sunday to you too. They found bones that were, they found bodies of giants that were 7 foot tall, whole race of them, like the women and everyone was all 7 and over. And so they found their bodies, their redhead giants. They found, they were in full intact too. Dead for thousands of years, bodies fully intact, everything. So it's not impossible to find a body that's been dead for thousands of years with eyes, flesh, and all that still intact. That's not impossible. It's happened before. Egyptian technology has clearly illustrated that you can find, or you can have a body that's been dead for 2,000 years, and it looked like it just died a week ago. So I don't know, how they do it, but we found other, races of people that have been, like the one girl, she's like some Indian girl. She's been dead for, 3,000-4,000 years, and she looked like she died a couple days ago. So it's highly possible to find this, and they do. And of course, they found giants with femur bones taller than 6-foot men. The femur, I believe, is the largest bone in the body. So they're finding these bones that are like 12 foot high. So if you have a 12-foot high femur and you just scale up from there, you have yourself someone like a 35-foot individual. It's a big, big, big person. So we know that these giants are all over the place. But in the Bible, it says that the giants were in the days of Noah and after. So the question is, how did the giants survive the flood? We dipped into this before. That's why I'm kind of just skipping over a lot of it. We dipped into this before. How did the giants survive the flood? And how were they in the days then and then the days after? So there's some speculations. Did they go through a portal and reside in another universe and then come back? Did they go underground where the water didn't reach them? And, hide themselves? Did they go into mountains that were airtight and watertight? Because there was a giant found, in Afghanistan, living and breathing, and it attacked soldiers. So where did this guy come from? You know what I mean? Uh, and this guy was 12 foot. So where did he come from? Uh, and then when you start looking around at all the monoliths that were built, it's, and Beckley and all those, it's very, very clear that what we call giants, somebody today is a giant, Andre the Giant, 8 feet, that Andre the Giant would be an infant, would be a 2-year-old child compared to some of these temples and other structures that were built for these beings. I mean, they're just the steps to try. You need a ladder just to get up the steps of these temples, just to get to these temples. These places are so big, and some of these monoliths are so heavy. And then when you look at Easter Island, you go, wait a minute, all of these heads that are buried, they're finding out all of those heads. They're finding out that they're not heads. They're finding out that there's a whole body buried there, and there's several of them. Then there's other structures of some of them look like they're giants that laid down, and next thing you know, they look like a mountain, and it clearly looks like a human body. It's just like, is that that's a whole that mountain is a man, and one of them is like an elephant, and it looks like a whole elephant. That's that's gotta be. Oh my God, this thing is. I mean, the size of this elephant, but it's a rock structure. It looks like a mountain. But just the sheer size and weight of it, if it actually was an elephant, and it's just ridiculous. And when you keep looking at it, you're going, what if that was an elephant? And this thing is now a mountain. It's a mountain now. It looks just like a pachyderm. You're like, what if that was, and what if that human looking mountain really was a person? What if it stood up and it really was a person? How tall would that mountain be? It'd be about a mile high or so. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. And here's the thing about it, it wouldn't be uncommon. It wouldn't be uncommon to see a person walking around, half mile high. It wouldn't be. Wouldn't be uncommon. Poseidon was supposed to be 2 miles high. But what happened to these huge giants? Where did they go? Well, when you start looking at it from a scientific point, added with a spiritual point, you go, well, God got rid of them. He got rid of most of them. We don't see any 2 mile, 1 mile high, half mile high beings running around. We don't see them. Doesn't mean they don't exist. But nonetheless, how did, they were supposed to be in the days of Noah and after, how did they survive the flood? And then it's the question of, did they survive the flood? Well, God doesn't do something for no reason. So here's my speculation on what happened to the giants. I speculate that God used science because God is a scientist. He is the scientist. And he said, I'm going to wipe you all out. But I'm going to do it to where you'll still be here, but you won't be able to cause all the trouble that you were before. You won't be able to do anything, but you will be an example to my power. God loves to glorify himself. Glory be to God. Because he's magnificent. So here's what I think happened to them. I think what God did was he flooded the earth, right? And when he flooded the earth, some of these giants could have probably survived the flood itself. But nonetheless, what I think he did was when he flooded the earth, he also, the water itself was salt water. Now, let me explain. There are some lakes in Africa that, especially around volcanoes, and that's very important. There are some lakes in Africa that they're very rich in minerals to where if any animal that's not used to being around it goes into these lakes, that they will turn into stone. Now, there are some creatures like flamingos who can, breathe there, nest there, and all that because they're used to it. But if you're not used to it, you will turn into stone. Your skin, everything, inside out, you'll turn into solid stone. We know that this lake is, high in salt and all this other stuff, and it's mixed with something that comes out of volcanoes, yada, yada, yada. You can do the research. But nonetheless, God is he's a scientist. So what he probably did to these mile-high creatures that we see that can cause terrible, terrible damage with just the swing of their arms is he did the same thing he did to the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. He destroyed them, and then he told Lot's wife, the angels told Lot, "What? Do not turn around and look at the damage being done, because you will what? Turn into salt. You'll turn into a rock. You'll no longer be able to move, but it'll be a reminder of what God can do." And I believe that that large elephant-looking mountain was an elephant. I believe that these large mountains that look like people, they were people. They were giants. And those giants, once the water took them over, they turned to stone. And they're a reminder of what God can do in an instant. And we know that the fountains of the deep opened up, and we also know that there are large volcanoes that run in the Pacific. They're everywhere. And once those volcanoes spill out, molten lava, and that molten lava mixes with salt water, it becomes highly toxic, and anything that's of the flesh, it turns anything of the flesh to stone. And that's what I believe happened to a lot of the large giants that we don't see. The really big, tall ones that these megaliths were made for. And who actually made these megaliths. That's what happened to them. When the world was flooded and taken over, they were doused in salt water, and it turned their bodies into stone. It's your boy Tone 202. Just a theory. I guess the next theory is, if at all possible, can you turn something from stone into flesh? You probably could, but I wouldn't do it. I'm out.